So when I have to determine how to repair this door and what repairs to make, there are different considerations that I need to take into account. The most important is the historic value of the door. This door does not have historic value, and we could tell that by the hardware that was used. I can show you some of the hardware. There's just modern nails, factory made nails. A nail like this was holding the door together. It just had simple finishing nails were used on the door. So that's one of the things you want to look for when you're determining how old a piece of the house is. If this had forged nails, if it just had plain wood joinery, we would have to investigate a little more to see if this was historic or not. And we do have records of this section of the house that show that section of the house was built in 1930. So we're placing this door around 1930, which gives it no historic value for us to be too careful in this in this process of preserving it or restoring it. So we could put in a completely different door, but we do want to also be careful of the architecture of the house. We want the door to fix the style of the house. So the style that we have here is colonial revival, and that's the style that we have in most of our buildings here. So we're going to pretty much use the design that we have, and I have determined that we need to replace this door because there's rot on all the pieces of this door. The joints for the panels, all the way down the stiles, the ends of the rails. This is the biggest rot problem here was this. So if this was historic, then we might consider doing something like filling this with epoxy, or removing just as much as we need to, and replacing it with what's called a Dutchman, which is a piece of wood that basically fills in where the rot was. That was done before on this door. If you can see, these are Dutchmen here. So this door was previously repaired, and what they did was they cut out this section of the stiles and replaced them with Dutchmen. You can see it on both of the stiles here. They used a mitered lap joint, which is good. It's the appropriate joint. It's the joint that I would use if I was going to put in a Dutchman on these doors. They also replaced the bottom rail of the door, and they did not replace this, which is the middle stile, I would call it. It's so rotten that I think it has been there previous to that repair, but they did replace the exterior panels, but not the interior panels. So this door has two panels. The exterior and the interior go like this, and they fit into the grooves of the stiles and the rails. You can see on the interior panels, it's rotted away the tongue here, and these tongues on the exterior are in good shape. So you would think that I would think that the exterior tongues would have rotted before the interior, but that's not the case. So these have been replaced, I believe. The exterior panels, the bottom rail, and the Dutchman here, the bottom of the stiles. They did a good job on the joinery here. However, biggest problem with this door was that it fell apart at the bottom. This rail, when I opened the door, this rail fell completely off. That is because it's tied in with just these tongues. So all that's holding this door together is glue and these little tongues that are fit into that groove on the bottom. That is not good structurally. What they should have done, and I don't know why they didn't, if they knew how to make this kind of joinery on the Dutchman, I don't know why they wouldn't have mortised into these Dutchmen and made tenons here. So you'd make this tongue come out to be a tenon and fit into a hole here in the wood, which is called a mortise. And I'll show you that I did that in the repair that I did. So in all this door has been repaired before. It has lots of rot, and it doesn't have any historic value. So we're not going to spend a lot of time epoxying this or putting Dutchmen in. We're just going to build a new door. And since there aren't historic restrictions upon it that we have to follow, we don't have to make this exact door, but I like the style, and I do like to keep the style the same as much as possible, but we're going to just make some improvements in the structure. So we're going to make that bottom rail a little bigger. We're going to mortise and tenon the bottom. That's going to, in turn, make the panels a little shorter. But other than that, it's going to be kept the same, except for the window. The window, they had the window fit in against this groove, or into this groove, but they cut out one side of the groove so it fit in this way. And the nice thing about that is that you could take the window out without taking the door apart. But in order to keep the window in there, they had to toenail it in. I didn't like that design, so I'll show you on my new door. I'm actually going to keep these rails so that this window sits in, and it's held in by the tongue in the window and the groove in the stiles, and that will secure the window. But to repair it, you'll have to take the door apart. I figure if this window is rotted enough that you need to take it out, the door will be in rough enough shape that it'll be pretty easy to take apart, and you'll probably want to take the door apart anyway to do that repair. What goes on doors first usually is the glazing around the glass, and of course we'll have to do that when we make the new window, but you can address that without taking the door apart. You don't have to take apart the window at all. You can leave the glass there. You just scrape the glaze out and reglaze it, and it's a routine maintenance that goes along with painting usually. So this is the old door. We're going to clear this door off the bench, and I'll put the new door on and show you how I went about making that. This door has panels and a window, 3 rails, and 2 stiles. And it is put together with mortise and tenon joinery. And the panels fit into grooves, tongue and groove joints for that. So I'll show you the window first. Since the joints are pretty loose, normally you'd make it a little tighter. I'm going to glue this all together so it'll be okay. But that's a little loose for those joints. But you can see how a window is built. These are the stiles which have, well actually these are the rails. These are long rails and they have the mortises. And the styles. Sorry. The rails have tenons, which go into the mortises and the stiles. And then the centerpieces, munions. I think they're called munions. I forget what this architectural piece is called all the time on windows because it's just hard for me to say and remember. I think it's munions though. Okay, so these go here, center, mortise and tenon. You have to make this neat little profile in order to receive this profile. And a little tricky. You do it on the router and then on the bandsaw. I use the bandsaw. You can use different things. You use a coping saw to make that profile fit together. So yeah, that's the window portion. And what we're gonna do is along these stiles, we're going to make a rabbet actually. So this window will fit into here. It'll fit into the groove. There's no groove on the top and bottom, so we don't have to make a rabbet along the length, but along the width of the window, we will make a rabbet in order to fit in here. That's how the window is going to fit in and stay secure in the door, if that makes sense. But I did not make this window to size yet. I didn't make those cuts yet because I want to get it all glued up together, but I don't want to glue it together before I show you how it's put together. So now that that's out of the way, I can glue that up, cut it to size, and fit it in here. So let's see. I can take this apart using a rubber mallet. It's pretty tight, but this is how a door would come apart. If you hear any wood splitting and swearing, that is because I just ruined my door. Now you can always repair fixes. I mean, repair fixes? You can always make repairs on your mistakes. But if you don't make the mistakes, then you don't need to make those extra repairs. That's better. Nice and gentle, nice and easy always when putting things together or taking things apart. Alright, so we got one style off. Now you can start to see how these tenons were made. The groove, the tongue that fits into the groove is actually a little wider than the tenon. That's due to the size of my mortise chisel, which is 1/2 inch, and it had to be 3/4 of an inch to fit into the groove. So this is 3/4 and this is 1/2. Why else was that decision made? It gives more glue surface. I think it makes for a tighter, more handsome joint. So I also have this, I don't know if it's called half blind. It's not blind because it goes all the way down. Every joint has a different name, and I actually don't know exactly what you would call this, but there's a different way of doing this. You could have this come all the way in, so the tenon is flush with the end of the wood here, but this fits in there. So what that does is eliminates a little piece of wood over here, which I was showing you on the shutters. I don't know if you saw that on the summer doors. that little piece tends to go because it's, how do I explain this? Well, if I was taking this out, I'd be putting pressure down here, and there's just not a lot of support there, so that it tends to come out. So I like this joint better, where you have more meat on the tenon and not on the mortise end. So keep the meat on the tenon side, not the mortise side. I think that's for more integrity of the joint. So that's how those joints work. And then, yeah, you can see the 3/4 groove that goes all the way down. And that groove receives, the thicker portion of the rails, the tongue that is in the panels. Let me show you the panels. Exterior and interior 1/2-inch grooves. 3/8 grooves together makes 3/4 groove. Fits in nice and tight. I say nice and tight. Could be a little tighter. We'll actually tighten that up when we put this door together permanently. Okay. Let's see if we can take that out. All right. Okay. Okay. When you're taking things apart, I've already done this. You want to mark them so that if they fit together good one way, you want to keep it that way and put it back together the same way. So what I did is, actually, when I was planing this wood, we don't have a planer, so I did all my planing by resawing on the table saw. This was all 2-inch stock, and it had to come down to 1 3/4. So I took some off each side, and usually could have done it a little better. I didn't realize how much I had to take off. So there's some rough stuff here that I'm going to sand off, but I wanted all the rough stuff on the same side. So, and that's the exterior side. It's going to get painted. So you really won't notice it as much as you would on the inside, which is going to get stained. So when you're choosing your lumber, you want to take into consideration, those things. When you're making all your cuts, you consider where the knots are. You want to cut off as much knot as possible. You want to, and grain isn't a huge consideration with this if you're not carving or whatever, but yeah, so this is how this is put together. This middle stile, I added a nice and meaty mortise here that goes in like 1 1/4 inches. The last one only went in 1 inch. I thought it wouldn't hurt to have it go in a little further. And this is the big improvement on this door, is this bottom rail, right? Because you didn't have tenons on that rail, and that's why the door fell apart. And it was only 4 inches wide. Now we've extended it to 6. I think it's 4.5, and now it's 6.5. I've extended it 2 inches. So that gives you more contact on the bottom, and these tenons are going to make all the difference. It's really, really necessary. So yeah, just tight enough that you can pull it out by hand with a little struggle, and that's about as tight as you want it. You don't want to have to hammer it in, because that's when you're going to split the wood, and you don't want it too loose, because you need as much contact as possible. Is going to give you more stability. So that's the door. That's the gist of it. brief explanation of how a door is put together.